Op's son died unexpectedly, and his wife's narcissistic immediate family, along with his sister, made it so much worse. Editor's note: Op made 2 original posts, one about his mother-in-law and the other about his sister, that add context to the whole story. Both have been included before the first update. All posts by you/throwaway and broken 13. Mother-in-law post. Op posted in r/just no mill. Our son died unexpectedly and my mill made it so much worse. I was told to cross-post here as it is a more appropriate sub for my story. I needed to tell my story, get an unbiased opinion, and just vent to get it off my chest. I'm using a throwaway account because the details are very private, and I wish to remain anonymous. Warning: this is long, as I am a very detailed person. This is just one issue in a very hard year, as there is much more. To start off, I guess, my son is dead. My little boy was 13 months old. A pillar of health. We cherished and cared for him with all we had. He was perfect on Tuesday, dying on Wednesday, and passed 7 days later. That is a whole other story in itself. I got along well enough with my in-laws. However, my mother-in-law acts very immature and erratic. My wife told me her mom used to be an alcoholic. As I grew more confident in my relationship with my wife, I told her, I think your mom might have alcoholic brain damage. Where I need help is this. My son needed emergency surgery as his brain, for unexplained reasons, was swelling. They had to remove part of his skull to allow for the expansion. My parents arrived within an hour of my call. My in-laws, whom this post is about, arrived much later, even though they live 30 minutes closer. My in-laws left as quickly as they arrived. My parents, however, stayed. They slept on waiting room coffee tables, waiting to hear if our little boy would live. He made it through that first surgery, only to pass away the day after Mother's Day. My parents never left our side, even though they had brought no clothes or supplies. My in-laws, on the other hand, did not reappear until it was time to say goodbye. My mother-in-law arrived in pajama shorts and a t-shirt that was too small to hide her girth. She began asking the nurse if they had ever treated any murderers. As we took our time saying our goodbyes, she noisily played games on her iPad. The nurses arranged for us to take him outside one last time, even though he was on life support. You see, our son rarely cried, but whenever he did, we simply took him outside. It cheered him up instantly. Being outdoors was his favorite place in the world. My wife went first and held him one last time beneath the stars to say goodbye. Before I even had my turn, my mother-in-law asked us to hurry up. I was furious. I told her in the calmest voice I could muster, leave. I meant for her to go home. She took it as permission to go inside. She stopped to clarify, and I just said, go. We brought my son back inside, and they disconnected him from the machines that kept him alive. It was the hardest thing ever. I have been diagnosed with depression, severe anxiety, and PTSD, and I am on antidepressants as a result. While we were waiting for him to pass on, he slowly started turning gray. My mother-in-law decided to clean up his hospital room. The problem with that is, as you know, she wasn't there, so the stuff she was throwing out was our paperwork from the social worker for grief support, etc. My mom stopped her from throwing it out while I yelled at her to stop. All the while, my father-in-law and sister-in-law sat there doing nothing, looking annoyed. When he was finally gone, my wife had to wait for the nurses to remove him from her arms, which was quite difficult as he was limp. My mother-in-law left immediately. When my wife got up, she asked, crying, "Where's my mom? I need a hug." We did not see or speak to my in-laws for 2 days. We couldn't bear the hurt on top of the grief. I decided to clear the air and invited just my father-in-law for lunch. He arrived, made idle chit-chat, and then got up to leave. I said, "What about lunch?" He said he needed to get home. We told him to wait, we needed to discuss some things. We described how hurt we were by my mother-in-law's behavior, and he said she just didn't cope well. We said we would do our best to understand, but while we were sorting out our feelings, please ask her not to disturb us. We also said that if she was struggling, she had the option not to come to our son's visitation, we would understand. His response was, "Well, I guess I'll go home and kill myself." I have no clue what he said to my mother-in-law. Next thing we know, she phones and says, "I hear you were upset with me. Too effing bad. I won't be at the visitation." Click. I was furious. I felt like I had just failed as a father, I was not going to fail as a husband. I immediately called her back and tore her a new one. Her response was, "I am not going to talk to you if you are going to use that language." I said, "F you. You don't get to swear at my grieving wife and then claim some kind of moral high ground." She hung up on me. She immediately phoned my wife, who had said and done nothing at this point. She called my wife a effing beach and hung up. Then she began calling us every 2 seconds. Then she started sending threatening texts, saying she would harm us. I called my father-in-law and told him to get things under control or I was calling the police. He begged me not to call the cops and took away her phone. The call stopped. We did not receive any support from my wife's family. They did not attend any events prior to the visitation. My father-in-law showed up late to my son's visitation wearing cargo shorts and an old golf shirt. A few days passed. I called my wife's aunt, whom I had gotten to know a little, as they were not a close family. I asked her for some perspective on my mother-in-law. She said they had a falling out over 20 years ago. Apparently, the aunt had cancelled a sleepover between my wife and her cousin because the cousin didn't want to go anymore. My mother-in-law told the aunt, "I hope you die." She then drove over to their home, knocked on the aunt's door, and told her again, face to face, "I hope you die." Apparently, my wife's family disappeared for 3 years. The extended family had no idea where they were. Then we spoke to my wife's grandmother. She told us that my mother-in-law was diagnosed as bipolar years ago and has a history of violent behavior, including repeatedly slamming the grandmother's arm in a car door. The grandmother reiterated that they lost track of my wife and in-law's whereabouts for 3 years. She feared that my mother-in-law would be violent toward my wife. My wife broke into tears, saying that her mother had beaten her repeatedly in her drunken stupors. Now we had a clearer picture: my mother-in-law is mentally ill. My father-in-law knew this and hid it from his children. He knew how unstable his wife was and still brought her to the hospital. He completely mismanaged the situation by keeping everyone in the dark. My wife asked him very respectfully for a break in communication, advised by her therapist, as she needed to heal, and her family was hurting more than helping. It's been a few months, and we finally heard from him again. I have copied and pasted his email below. I hope you are doing well. You are always in my thoughts. I'm writing this email because we really need your help with Mom. She has been in the psych ward in the hospital twice, once for 6 days and then for over 2 weeks. The root of this problem was her reaction to your son's passing and how her reaction to this was treated. As her therapist says, everybody reacts to death differently, and no two people grieve the same. I think it would be healthier if you two could get past this and start a healing process. At present, your mother is sliding back into a very depressed state, brought on by 2 things: the absence of your son and the absence of her eldest daughter. She said this to her therapist at her latest session. I'm sure Mom misses you and thinks of you often but is nervous to reach out to you, as you may not be ready for this. Mom's therapist is very concerned with her mental state, so I think a phone call or setting up a visit, just you, to see if you two can reconnect at some level, even if it's meeting at a coffee shop or at Mom's therapist's office, would be helpful. Whatever you are both comfortable with. It may or may not work, but I see this as a good, viable option compared to what's going on now. So, mull this over and please let me know if us getting together is a possibility. We would really like it to be. Love, Dad. In her response, my wife told him everything we had learned and pointed out how he had failed as a father, including this email, which was void of fatherly concern for her well-being. She did, however, offer to meet with her mother-in-law's therapist if it would help. His response was, "Sorry to have disappointed you. Have a nice life." I was furious at this email. Not only did he not care about my wife's mental state, but he also did not try to re-establish communication first before making an ask. My wife has decided she is done with her parents. I have supported her decision, as they have been toxic to both of our recoveries. Sister post same day. Op posted in r/justnofamily, completely done with my sister after my son died. Posted earlier today, I was directed to the sub. I cross-posted there if you're interested. I won't post again here, but I wanted to share about my sister. My sister is 4 years older than me. We were somewhat close since our parents only had the 2 of us. She always bossed me around, but by the time I was 12, I realized she was not a kind person. My sister had screwed me over for years. I would help her constantly, even to my own detriment, because, in my mind, that's what families do. But she would never help me when I needed her. The few times she agreed to help, she would pull out at the last minute. I could give you years of backstory, but I'll skip ahead to the final straws. 4 years ago, my wife and I were buying our first home. My brother-in-law owned a truck for his business. My sister offered it to help us move, as my brother-in-law was quite sickly, lung issues, and couldn't help with the actual lifting, etc. This was to be their contribution. 2 days before moving day, she called me to say she didn't want to put the wear and tear on the truck. I was stressed beyond belief and furious that she was pulling this crap on me again. However, I kept my cool. She swore up and down that they couldn't help, that my brother-in-law was too sick, and that his nurse would be coming on moving day. She offered to pay for a moving truck if I could manage to book one. Great. I booked the truck and called her back. She yelled at me and told me it needed to be booked under her card so she could write it off. Fine, whatever. She gave me the card number and then said, "Well?" I replied, "Well, what?" She asked, "Aren't you going to ask me to help you move?" In my head, I was going, WTF? She had spent months telling me they couldn't help, including in this very conversation. I replied, "No." She lost it again and accused me of just using her for her money. At that point, I had enough and said, "You know what? If you think that little of me, the truck is already booked under my credit card. I'm good." I hung up and didn't speak to her for 2 years. What brought me back into the fold was that my brother-in-law was dying. I decided that, As crappy as she was, everyone deserves family. I reached out and asked if she needed anything. She asked me to visit her husband in the hospital, so I did. I visited him once a week until he was transferred further away, and then I started calling him. He died waiting for a lung transplant. My mom phoned me with the news. I said I'd be at my sister's place right away. My mom said, "You might not be welcome there." I said it didn't matter. Family is family. If she threw me out, so be it. I had to try to be there for her and her kids. We never reconciled. We just pretended nothing was wrong. I rejoined family events in an effort to give them a sense of family. My son was born about 6 months later. It became harder to be there for her as I struggled to find my footing as a new dad with a stressful new job. But I made sure I was there for the hard days. My sister made little effort to be in my son's life. I was confused because she had been so excited for his birth, seeing him as a source of light in her life. Yet, she would take regular trips to my town, get drunk at the bar literally around the corner from my house, and not even pop in. I found out she had started sleeping around. I'm no slut shamer, and with brother-in-law being sick for so long, I'm sure she needed it, so I encouraged her at first. Then she slept with my mom's boss. It started to get out of hand. My nephew quit hockey because he was getting bullied in the locker room. We were all stunned. He loved hockey and was so personable. We later found out my sister had slept with one of the hockey dads, a married one. Next, we found out she had a falling out with her best friend. She would only tell us that her friend was a beach. We later learned from the best friend that they had fought over my sister's new boyfriend. She didn't like him. He was a substance dealer. We have family in law enforcement, so we had him looked up. Sure enough, he had been charged as recently as 2016 but got off on a technicality. He also had a suspended license but was driving her car around with her kids in it. Things were very tense between the family and her. Then my son died. She made an effort while he was in the hospital, but once he was gone, so was she. She blew off his celebration of life with no explanation or contact. I mustered the strength to attend her son's grade 8 graduation the following week. She refused to sit with us or even speak to us. I stopped talking to her after that. She texted me last month, saying she was giving me space, her spin on ignoring me. I told her she had let me down, and she was dismissive. I told her off and blocked her number. I'm done with her for good this time. Turns out she was pregnant with the substance dealer's baby. She named it after her dead husband. I joke with my therapist that my life has become some Jerry Springer crap. I texted my nephew when I thought it was safe to do so. She often takes his phone, reads his messages, and sometimes even texts back pretending to be him. I told him I loved him and that, even though I was out of his mom's life, I was not out of his. I assured him I would always have his back if he ever needed it and that my door was always open. I have a feeling he will be needing it. I heard from my mom that he told my sister to F off last week. Please don't think my nephew is disrespectful. He is an upstanding young man who attends Christian school. He has suffered so much, and he has had enough of her. As have we all. Update 3 months 2 weeks later. It's been a while. I thought I would share some new info and previously unshared details. Since my last post, we have not heard from my wife's family. The Have a Nice Life email we received was our last contact. We spent Christmas with my wife's aunt. She asked if we wanted any information about them. We declined. We don't care. They are out of our lives. We struggle daily with our loss. We struggle with zero support, as my parents are away. Last year felt so bad. Unemployment wouldn't cover me. During my bereavement leave, I was fired. I was on contract, so no laws protected me. I attempted to take my own life twice. I felt I had failed as a father and, again, as a man. I have finally seen a psychiatrist and am now on antidepressants. I start with a new grief counselor this week, and I have started looking for a new job, as I finally feel able to do so. My wife recently gave birth to a baby girl. I now have a daughter. A small piece of me was repaired. It feels bittersweet to be a dad again. We told very few people about the pregnancy, maybe 10 people at most. Anything could go wrong during a pregnancy, and we did not want to have to face the world if we potentially lost another child. I later realized that the people we trusted enough to tell were the same ones who came to the house to check on us. It's difficult to hide a pregnancy when people physically see your wife getting larger. I mention all this because my sister chose to stop talking to us, so naturally, she did not know about the pregnancy. The day my daughter was born, I told my nephew about it. I love him too much to make him feel alienated. I guess he told his mom, and she was furious. No idea why, other than the fact that she is a narcissist who hates not being the center of attention. She called and berated my parents. Meanwhile, her substance dealer boyfriend texted me, telling me how crappy my parents and I are. I responded by texting, "My son is dead. My daughter was just born. Is this the man you want to be today?" He called me a retard. I told him to stay classy and blocked his number. I should mention that my sister and her substance dealer boyfriend also had a baby last year. They didn't tell me about it. I'm confused by the double standard. My sister spent the first week of my daughter's life phoning everyone we knew, those she was still in good standing with, demanding to know if they had known about the pregnancy. Of course, since we had kept it a secret, they all said they didn't know. That was the last I heard from her, though I doubt she'll stay quiet. My sister-in-law, whom I have yet to talk about, unblocked us on social media. I can only assume this was to try to glimpse pictures of our daughter. She also sent us a baby gift with no return address. I believe she did so to force us to open it before seeing who it was from. We have since donated her gift to charity, as we want nothing to do with her. My wife wants zero reminders of her family around. I do not know if my mother-in-law knows about my daughter. Her mom, my wife's grandmother, asked people not to tell her, as it might disturb her mental health. Second update 11 months later. Hi everybody, it's been a while. Got a lot to update you on. I guess we'll start with me. I have been in the care of both a counselor and a psychiatrist. I seem to be on a good balance of meds for my depression and anxiety, and I have been feeling a lot better lately. Thanks to my psychiatrist, I was approved for disability, so I have some income now. Because of this, we decided that my wife should return to work while I stay home to watch our daughter. I have been a stay-at-home dad since September, and it's been going well. My daughter is now older than my son was when he died. We continue to have zero contact with my mother-in-law and my wife's entire immediate family. However, my wife's aunt has been very supportive. I've become a lot more insightful about the toxic nature of my wife's family relationships, thanks to all of you. My wife attended grief counseling for our son, and today, she started counseling to deal with her family issues. She came home pretty happy, which was encouraging to see. Now we get into the real drama, my sister. My sister definitely has NPD, and coming to terms with that has helped me immensely. I realize now that my sister is incapable of loving me the way I deserve. She is still with the substance dealer, and they are now engaged. My eldest nephew is almost 16. He got a full-time job and is on the basketball team. He uses these as excuses to never be home. Some recent issues have come to light. They have been physically and verbally abusing my 13-year-old niece. They have kicked and slapped her. They have bound and gagged her with duct tape. They call her SLT and a CNT on a regular basis. Their reasoning for this is that she socializes primarily with boys. What they fail to understand is that she socializes with boys because she is as immature as they are. She does not like to gossip with the girls her age. She prefers to play soccer and tag with the boys. My niece met a Lebanese boy through a church meetup. They hit it off and became friends. My sister found a picture of them together on social media and lost her crap. She went on a racist tirade and told my niece that Muslims would love to get a hold of a little blonde girl and take her back to Lebanon. I found this very confusing because A, they met at a church meetup, and B, we did not grow up in a racist household. My niece believes that the substance dealer is responsible for bringing racism into their household. I also find this confusing because he is biracial, German/Japanese. They forbade my niece from seeing this boy simply because he is brown. However, one day they bumped into him at the mall. The substance dealer grabbed the boy, held a knife to him, and threatened him to stay away from my niece. The substance dealer was later arrested for this. He was released pending trial. He blamed my niece for the whole thing, and they began attacking her at home. It ended with my sister saying, "I wish you would kill yourself." My niece then went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and self-harmed her wrist. My niece's friends at school reported it to Children's Aid, and an investigation began. My sister told my niece that if she lost either of her sons over this, she would disown her and stop loving her. Due to the substance dealer's charges and the Children's Aid investigation, my sister, who had not been speaking to my parents, called them in a panic. On a long shot, my mom suggested she send my niece down south to stay with them. They are snowbirds. My sister was desperate and agreed. My niece is currently safe and happy with my parents. My parents and I agree that they must keep her at all costs. She cannot go back to that abusive home. I will let you know if they get legal custody of her, as the battle is only just beginning. We get little nuggets of information from my niece as she remembers things. Again, she is naive/immature. She says the substance dealer gets high, and when he is high, he becomes paranoid. He gets a machete out and sits with it. He often forgets it and leaves it lying on the couch for the toddler to find. I had to ask my niece something I already knew the answer to in my heart, but I needed to hear it. She told me that she and her older brother did not come to my son's celebration of life because my sister kept it from them. My niece and nephew still love me, but their mom has kept them from me. I knew deep down that was what was happening, but it still hurts so much to know that I was deprived of their love and comfort at a time in my life when I needed it most. Editor's note. Op has a final update posted 3 years 3 months after the last update I just covered, but his post was deleted too fast for it to be archived. Op has not posted anything else since.